Hello everybody, my name is Happy and I'd like to welcome you all to my History Reaction channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the terrifying history of sleep paralysis by a channel called The Graveyard Shift. As always, I will include a link to the original content in the description down below. Please consider heading over to Graveyard Shift and show them some appreciation if you like what you see here. Alright, it is Halloween when I'm releasing this. So far this month, every week I try to do at least one video themed to ghosts, goblins, or things that go bump in the night. I figured we'd close this off with this particular video, the terrifying history of sleep paralysis. Why? Because I brought this up a couple times in a couple of the other videos. I've experienced sleep paralysis. It is a real phenomenon. It is a well-documented psychological and physiological issue that people have, and it's global. It occurs all over the world. About 7 to 8% of the global population has experienced sleep paralysis in some form over the course of their life. I've had it happen to me at least 3 times that I can clearly remember. It's possible I might have had other incidents that have faded from memory, but 3 that I can clearly remember. 2 are extremely clear. The first 2. Well, actually, the first one is the most recent one. The middle one is a little grayer, but I still remember it too. And it's not something I wish on anybody. It is a terrifying experience. If you've experienced, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, be thankful. It's not a pleasant experience. Anyway, let's get into this video. Let's see what they have to tell us about sleep paralysis and how it can literally bring our nightmares to life. In fact, it is the inspiration for the term nightmare.
Imagine for a moment waking up in the middle of the night frozen in your bed, unable to move or speak. A wave of panic rushes over you as you hopelessly watch your closet door creak open and a black, shadowy figure with long, decaying fingers slinks out into the darkness. You struggle to move or breathe as the figure leans on your chest and caresses your face.
Pretty accurate.
There is a chance that you are part
Not necessarily the closet part, but everything else is pretty classic symptoms of sleep paralysis. The inability to move, quite frequently, and difficulty breathing. It's usually accompanied by a shadow figure or some kind of a terrifying entity, either directly seen or sensed, often leaning over you or literally sitting and kneeling or otherwise compressing your chest. Sometimes it's a humanoid figure. There's been stories of animals too, like cats especially. Terrifying experience.
of the 8% of the general population to experience sleep paralysis. A waking terror that renders its victims immobile and unable to defend themselves from paranormal dangers brought to life from the dream world. So, today on Scream to Screen, we study the terrifying history of sleep paralysis and attempt to uncover what causes us to experience seemingly real-life nightmares with supernatural entities.
Right.
But first, don't forget to subscribe to Graveyard Shift for all your horror content brought to life. And let us know in the comments what sinister stories you want to hear more about next.
All right, what is it?
Sleep paralysis is a state in which a person who is either falling asleep or waking up becomes aware but unable to move or speak. During an episode, one may hallucinate dark images, which often result in immense fear. The condition can be triggered by sleep deprivation, psychological stress, or abnormal sleep cycles. The underlying mechanism is believed to involve a dysfunction in the REM sleep, which causes a person to become temporarily paralyzed. This condition is often accompanied by imagined sounds like humming, hissing, static, zapping, and buzzing noises. But more chilling sounds such as voices, roars, and whispers are common as well. People have also experienced sensations of being dragged out of bed, flying, numbness, and feelings of electric vibrations running through their body. These symptoms generally cause intense emotions of fear and panic to sweep over the subjects, triggering hypnagogic hallucinations such as a supernatural creature or demonic entity suffocating the individual. Many patients who have experienced a feeling of pressure on their chests and difficulty breathing also described scenes of a demon or some sort of succubus sitting on top of and incapacitating them.
Yep. Yeah. My very first experience, there was something standing beside my bed. A tall, I would call it a shadow figure with glowing I want to say kind of a golden colored eyes, the best way I could describe it. And as I watched, I couldn't move, I could barely breathe, I was just struggling to say, do anything, and it slowly started to fade away until only the eyes were left, and then they finally faded. Second time, I had a more what they just said, some shadowy figure was sitting on my chest, gazing down at me. It was horrifying. And in the middle one, the one between these two extremes, it's not as clear, but I remember waking up again, unable to move, unable to breathe, and there was something moving around the room. I could sense it. I could see shadows moving, but I was alone at the time. There was nobody else there. It was the more vague of the three that I do remember. But I distinctly remember being unable to move, breathing was difficult, couldn't speak, just laying there and knowing there was something else there with me. Not a pleasant experience.
The original definition of sleep paralysis was codified by Samuel Johnson in 1755 in his book, A Dictionary of the English Language, as simply nightmare.
Yep.
And the concept itself dates back even further. Pretty much since the beginning of time, there has been evidence of sleep paralysis experiences. From ancient Mesopotamia to the Roman Empire, it was common knowledge that a demon known as the incubus was responsible for your bad dreams.
Yeah, it wasn't always, obviously it wasn't called incubus in every myth or legend, but this kind of thing was common throughout world history and throughout cultures. It's a very common thing because it is a real thing. And I'm not saying the creatures are real necessarily, but the experience is real. It is something that happens.
Originating from the Latin to sit on,
Right.
the incubus sat on top of your chest, inducing horrifying dreams and physical immobility.
Yep.
This makes it the first documented explanation of sleep paralysis.
And that is a famous painting of the nightmare. Pretty sure that's the title of the painting, but I could be wrong on that. But yeah, this is exactly what people describe seeing, is not necessarily this particular image, but something on their chest or on their abdomen that's preventing them from breathing. They can't move. It's not pleasant.
The term mare in nightmare dates back to the Old English name for the incubi, Mara, or crusher. Not quite a demon, a Mara is a person with magical attributes who rides their victim for the pleasure of pure wickedness. In subsequent centuries, the understanding of the Mara morphed into the myth of the night-hag, a generic name for a folkloric creature used to explain the phenomenon of sleep paralysis. A common description of a night-hag includes a person feeling the presence of a supernatural and malevolent being, immobilizing their victim as if standing on their chest.
Yep.
This phenomenon goes by many names depending on the culture.
Yeah, I know the Germans have Alp, A-L-P. There are a variety of elf that does this, for example.
Although the core features of sleep paralysis appear to be universal, the ways in which they are experienced vary according to time, place, and lifestyle. Outside of night-hag, over 100 terms have been identified for these experiences, with some scientists even using it as an explanation for reports of paranormal phenomena, such as ghost sightings, alien abductions, and demonic possessions. In Cambodia, sleep paralysis is known as the ghost who pushes you down, and entails the widespread belief that experiences are dangerous visitations from deceased relatives. According to studies, culture plays a major factor in shaping sleep paralysis. When it is interpreted through a particular culture filter, it may take on greater salience. For example, if a certain group fears sleep paralysis, this could lead to a conditioned fear, and thus worsen the experience and lead to a higher rate of frequent occurrence. Consistent with this idea, high rates and long durations of immobility during sleep paralysis have been found in Egypt, where elaborate beliefs about the phenomenon are conceptualized as terrifying attacks by malicious creatures called the jinn. Research has found that 50% of sleep paralysis sufferers in Egypt associate a great fear of impending death with the condition. Meanwhile, studies in Denmark, a culture that simply chalks sleep paralysis up as an odd psychological event, show overall shorter episodes of sleep paralysis, and only 17% of people who suffer from it fear death.
Right. That kind of makes sense. If you've got a belief system that incorporates evil entities or vengeful spirits or whatever, you're already paralyzed, you're still kind of in a dream state, your brain is going to amplify all that. It's going to terrify you. If your culture or your upbringing is leaned more towards the rational side, where you understand that this is a psychological effect, it's still going to have an impact. The inability to breathe, the inability to move, the struggle to breathe, is still going to be frightening, but your mind is not going to necessarily escalate it as much in that dream state to where you think something supernatural is going on and escalates the situation. Okay?
If you've never personally had a run-in with sleep paralysis, consider yourself part of the lucky majority. Lifetime prevalence rates derived from 35 aggregated studies indicate that approximately 8% of the general population have experienced at least one episode at some point in their lives. Chances for an episode increase in students and mental health patients, as the same studies have shown that 28% of students and 32% of psychiatric patients have experienced sleep paralysis at least once. This number surges even further for individuals native to Canada, China, England, Japan, and Nigeria, as well as studies from these countries have reported, at least one episode in 20 to 60% of their populations. Isolated sleep paralysis is commonly seen in patients that have been diagnosed with narcolepsy. Approximately 30 to 50% of people with narcolepsy have had an episode as an auxiliary symptom. Rates of recurrent sleep paralysis are not as well known, but 15 to 45% of those with a lifetime history may suffer from recurrent isolated sleep paralysis. A majority of the individuals who have experienced sleep paralysis have sporadic episodes that occur once a month to once a year. And only 3% of individuals whose experience is not associated with neuromuscular disorder have nightly episodes. The pathophysiology of sleep paralysis has not been concretely identified, but there are several theories about its cause. The first of these stem from the understanding that sleep paralysis is a parasomnia resulting from dysfunctional overlap of the REM cycle and waking stages of sleep. Research has found a genetic component in sleep paralysis. The characteristic fragmentation of REM sleep, hypnopompic, and hypnagogic hallucinations have a heritable component in other parasomnias, which lends credence to the idea that sleep paralysis is also genetic. Twin studies have shown that if one half of identical twins experiences sleep paralysis, then the other half will likely experience it as well. The identification of a genetic component means that there is some sort of disruption of a function at the physiological level. In addition to culture, a state of hypervigilance in the midbrain have also been found to contribute to hallucinations. Hypervigilance is when the nervous system is not correctly filtering sensory information, and the individual experiences an enhanced state of sensory sensitivity. More specifically, the emergency response is activated to the brain when individuals wake up paralyzed and feel vulnerable to attack. This helplessness can intensify the effects of that threat response well above the level typical of normal dreams, which could explain why such visions during sleep paralysis are so vivid. The threat-activated vigilance system is a protective mechanism that differentiates between dangerous situations and determines whether the fear response is appropriate. The hypervigilance response can lead to the creation of endogenous stimuli that contribute to the perceived threat. A similar process can explain hallucinations, with slight variations in which an evil presence is perceived by the subject to be attempting to suffocate them, either by pressing heavily on the chest or by strangulation. A neurological explanation holds that this results from a combination of the threat vigilance activation system and the muscle paralysis associated with sleep paralysis that removes voluntary control of breathing. Several features of REM breathing patterns exacerbate the feeling of suffocation. These include shallow rapid breathing, hypercapnia, and slight blockage of the airway, which is a symptom prevalent in sleep apnea patients. According to this account, the subjects attempt to breathe heavily and find themselves unable to do so, creating a sensation of resistance, which the threat-activated vigilance system interprets as an unearthly being sitting on their chest, threatening suffocation. The sensation of entrapment causes a feedback loop when the fear of suffocation increases as a result of continued helplessness, causing the subject to struggle to end their episode of sleep paralysis.
Haunting of Hill House. Great series. If you haven't seen it, I consider it one of the best horror series ever made. Brilliant series. Not particularly terrifying. It has its moments, but great psychological drama, great family drama, and really fun story. Really love it. But yeah, one of the main characters suffers from sleep paralysis. So yeah, in pop culture. Yep.
When thinking of sleep paralysis in pop culture, the films Mara and Dead Awake comes to mind, along with the broke-neck lady in the first season of The Haunting of Hill House.
Right.
But the list doesn't stop there. Dozens of movies, television series, and short films by aspiring horror filmmakers have used sleep paralysis as a plot device for obvious reasons. A first-hand experience doesn't require a whole lot of imagination to recreate a terrifying scene on a big screen. Such is the case with the 2015 documentary The Nightmare, which discusses the causes of sleep paralysis as seen through extensive interviews with participants. The testimonies discussed are reenacted to show a glimpse of the horror experienced by the unfortunate subjects. In synopsis, the documentary proposes that such cultural phenomena as alien abduction, near-death experiences, and shadowy people can, in many cases, be attributed to sleep paralysis. So, how about you? Have you ever lived through the waking nightmare of sleep paralysis?
Absolutely.
What was your experience like? What did you see? If you or anyone you know has a personal story about sleep paralysis, we want to hear about it in the comments. Tell us all the haunting visions that kept you frozen in terror. Remember to like and subscribe to Graveyard Shift for all your...
That was fun, but yeah. Real phenomenon, real consequences in some cases. He didn't really touch on it, so I'll just add that the problem is when you're in deep REM sleep, your body tends to lock up. It's to protect you while you're in deep dreams. You don't want to be lashing out and acting out your dreams. If you do, you could injure yourself, you could injure somebody that's near you, damage things. So your normal sleep process, once you enter REM sleep, your body basically gets shut down to where it can't move involuntarily. So what ends up happening in sleep paralysis is, for some reason, some people will wake up while their body is still set up for your deep REM sleep. In other words, the paralysis lingers, but you're awake. And there's going to be a lag or a delay before the body realizes, wait, we're not in deep sleep anymore. You're not in REM. I'm not supposed to be paralyzing you anymore. And it can break the other way around, too. You can be in deep REM, and that paralysis can fail on you, and that's where you get things like sleepwalkers and people who lash out in their sleep. So it can go either way. My experience has been with sleep paralysis, where I'll wake up, but my body is still trapped in that dream state. And like they say here, it can be a truly terrifying situation. The feeling of helplessness, and maybe it's just because you just came out of an REM sleep and your brain's still primed for dreaming, but the hallucinations are real. They're there. And by real, I mean you're really hallucinating. You're really seeing something. Or at least you think you are. If anybody else out there has had sleep paralysis and this kind of thing, like he said, let us know. It's an interesting phenomenon, and it takes a lot of forms, but it's surprising how many of them have similarities and commonalities in them, which strongly indicates that it is something universal in human experience, but also there's something universal about how it manifests. Because all over the world and all through history, there are variations, but there are strong themes. The themes of shadowy, terrifying creatures around, often compressing your chest, forcing you not to breathe. It's really interesting stuff. So let me know if you've experienced it as well. I only know one other person personally that I know of had experienced it. That is my wife, and she just experienced it for the first time in her life. About 2.5, 3 years ago, and she was terrified when she woke up and was finally able to move again. Enough that she woke me up and was just freaking out. So it's a real thing, and it's definitely not fun to live through. Other than after the fact, where you can look back at it going, that was interesting. I want to find out more about it, which is exactly what I did. So anyway, thank you for joining me. I'm starting on my rambling again, so I'll just end it here. And let's move on, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.